Alright, in this video we are going to look at how to create a bar that will show us the progress of our data usage over the current billing cycle. And I have it coded so that when you reach your billing cycle it will reset and you can monitor it throughout the whole month of your billing cycle regardless of whatever day your billing cycle is on, unless you get billed from on the 31st of a month, which is kind of weird anyway because not all months have 31 days. Most of us probably have billing cycles that happen somewhere in the middle of the month. Mine, for example, starts at 17. So that's the first thing you need to go ahead and do. I'm going to go ahead and cut to the chase. If you want to learn about how I did all this stuff, I'm just going to tell you what to type in and tell you what to do right now. I'm going to do this a little bit different than how I've done my previous videos where I do all the explanations at the beginning and then I do the actual KLWP stuff at the end. I'm going to reverse it. I'm going to show you what you need to do, where you need to type it, and then at the end of the video you can learn about how this works and why this works. So we got some global variables. So all I'm really focusing on showing you is how to create this bar. Boom. I'll show you all this stuff at the end. Okay? And I got two bars here. One is one that I've created all just using rectangles and stuff. And then this one, the skinny one here, is a progress bar. We can do it with that one as well. Is one better than the other? No. The only thing about progress is that the most number of sections you can have is 100 sections. So, you know, it's going to do 100 clicks technically to get to the top of this. Whereas if you do a rectangle that grows in height, it will be smoother. But you probably won't even tell a difference anyway, to be quite honest with you. So, in KLWP, we got these global variables. Here they are. Start. Start needs to be, and this is a text global variable. Enter the date at which your billing cycle begins. So mine's on the 17th. Then we have one called before. That's a text global variable. There's the little code for it. Notice there's no dollar symbols there, as you can see right here. Just type that in. Now I'm using my global variable start. So if you're using if you're naming it different, then you might want to just make sure you take note not to use GV start there. Same thing applies for after. Notice I am using the GV start. Notice the dollar symbols, and I'm putting a D on the end. So make sure you're using whatever global variable you named for your billing cycle. Then I have a limit. This is the limit on my data usage, and as I drag this thing, well, here's the two bars. As I drag this, notice like if my limit's lower, notice one bar does kind of go crazy. That's something where, you know, with the progress, once you reach your limit, it's not going to keep on growing. That's the progress. This is the one I've created by hand, so it does kind of start to go crazy if you exceed your limit. So for example, I got my max limit at 5,000. That stands for 5 gigabytes. That is 5,000 megabytes. So as you can see here, for this current billing cycle I'm on, I haven't used hardly any at all. I got a color for OK. I can change that to whatever I want, and it's going to keep that. Notice it did change to blue. And the high, if I go too high, notice a moment ago it was red. Well, I can have it change to whatever color I want. So if I go above my limit, which if I drug my limit down, this would make my, look, see how it changed? And where is it changing at? Let me change this back to green and red just because that's going to be easier for me to refer to. So green is okay, and red is when I'm getting too high. And then we also have one more global variable where, oh yeah, we got two more actually, three more, my bad. Correct, there's that code, but of course you can't see all of it, so I'm going to open that up, let you look at it. Notice I'm using GV start, GV after, and GV before in my codes. I'm using the TS formulas for traffic stats. Is that what it stands for? Yeah, traffic stats. This is mobile traffic, by the way. I should have mentioned that sooner. This is just mobile traffic, but it is finding mobile traffic upload and download. I have the M in the code. If you've been messing around with it, you're familiar with some of this. But M, I strictly want it to pull megabytes. I don't want that to be automatic. I'll explain that more in the teaching section. For now, I just want you to know what to type in. So there's that. Correct. GV correct is what I called that. The bar background height. So basically it's how high do we want our bar to be. Well, I mean, you can set these number global variables to however big or however small you want. You can, and even after with a number global variable, you can go in and edit it too. Suppose you want it to be a little bit taller than 1,000. Suppose I want it to go up to 1,500. Just keep in mind, if you edit a global variable, it does move it to the bottom of the list. And now I can adjust that height. But notice as I do that, the green still stays as the same percentage of the whole height. Like it looks like roughly maybe 25%. Like here would be about 50, here would be 75, and then obviously up there is 100%. Well, notice if I do this, it's still covering, you know, roughly 25% because I'm somewhere in the neighborhood of using 25% of my data, given that my data limit is, what's my data limit set at in global variables? Okay, let me drag that up. Now I'm nowhere near 25%. I'm more like 20% or something like that, because my limit, I'm putting the limit at 5 gigabytes. I have 10 gigabytes, but it's shared with my wife, so you know, cut it right in half. And that's being nice when I say that. But anyway, when high. When I reach 80% of my limit, I want it to turn red. For example, if I come here and change this to 50%, maybe you noticed it was turning red as I got higher up the bar. I'm still not at my limit, but when high, when I reach 50%, well, watch what happens now. If I lower my limit, the green will start to rise, and once I reach the halfway point, it should change colors. Boom, do you see that? So those are the global variables I'm using here. Where do I use them at in the actual piece, the thing that I'm working on? Well, I'm going to show you the progress. Well, which one do I want to show you? Yeah, I'm going to show you the progress. There's nothing wrong with using progress. The only thing, like I said, is the most number of sections you can have is 100. So it's going, technically there's like 100 little slits in here. Are we actually going to be able to see those? Let me go back to my home screen. And no, you can't see them. If you could see them, I think you can adjust the style or something like that. But this is going to be just fine. You can create something similar with this one. I'll come back and show you that one too in a moment. So inside of progress, we want to set it to custom. Inside of level, here's where you first incorporate some of your global variables and create a new formula. Basically, we want to figure out what percentage of our current usage, I called it correct, that was that long code here. So we take that, divide by our limit, whatever your gigabyte limit is, take it, divide by that, and then multiply it by 100. Basically, we're at 40% of whatever my limit is right now. Now, just recall, though, that I think I did drag my limit around. So if I drag my limit back up to 5,000, I'm nowhere near my limit. Actually, my limit right now, or my current usage, is 811, roughly. As you can see that thing in orange right there. So if I take 811, divide by 5,000, I'm using roughly 16% of, I've used 16% of my data so far on this billing cycle. And to show you that a little bit further, if I go into progress and we look, check it out, 16.220, that exact same math that I showed you on the calculator a moment ago. Bump your sections up to 100. I rotated this thing 270 degrees and I have it positioned at the bottom left. You might say, well, it's not at the bottom left. Now it is, but when I do a little animation, that way we can focus our attention on that. Inside of color, we got to apply that red and that green or whatever we have for OK and high. All I did it was for the foreground color. If my current usage is greater than that global variable when high is that, what did I knock it at? I put it down to 50%, but whatever you change it to, it's going to apply here. So if my current data usage is greater than the percentage of the GV limit, so when high, 50% of our limit, if it's bigger than that or whatever percentage we pick, whatever decimal we type in there in that text global variable, it's going to flash, or it's going to show the color GV high, which is that red. It might not be the exact same color, but and then we have the GV OK if it's not greater than the percentage of our limit or the decimal times our limit. All right, so that's how we do our colors. And what else do I have to show you in here? Underneath style, under size, I have it set to bar BG height, bar background height. And whatever that's set to, I know over here it says 1,000, but I've copied these over. So whatever I had it set at, obviously it's set at 672, as we can go back and see right here. Bar background height, 762. But of course we can make that bar higher, and if you code everything right, everything should stay within that limit. And that's how you create the progress bar. I think I did cover everything in that particular piece. Custom, I showed you the formula there. Let me go back and double check because I want to make sure I don't miss anything. 100 sections, that's the highest you can go. I showed you the color. Apply whatever background color you want. Style, that. You can make the progress bar wider. You might say, well, that's not the height, that's the width. But remember, we did rotate it, right? Position, I don't care. Animation, you can animate it however you want. But I've showed you how to make the bar based on progress. Now, let me show you this one. This one will be a little bit smoother and a little bit more accurate because this thing right here is breaking it up into 100 sections. So technically, this bar right here, if my limit's at 5,000, if we divide it by 100, this thing's only going to move up to the next little tick mark, if you want to call it a tick mark. There's 100 little tick marks inside of here. From here all the way up to here, if it was full, it's 100 tick marks. It's only going to move up a tick mark each 50 megabytes that we go up because my limit is at 5,000. 5,000 divided by 100 is 50. So for every 50 megabytes I go up, this will go up an additional tick mark, whereas this bar over here will actually go up a touch more before this one actually goes up because this is a changing and it's not tick marks. It's like a solid rectangle that just has a height that changes depending on the percentage of my limit that I've used. I hope that makes sense. Let's look at that bar. This is the one now that's not a progress. So I've created two pieces here. I got a bar background. It's a rectangle. Its height is the same thing as the progress height, which is going to be that bar BGH. Adjust the width however you want. Adjust your colors however you want. But I think that's the only thing I have, and this is just the background, that white blending into that black, that grayish radiant there. I'll apply some corners to it, whatever. Here's the actual bar, this green piece down here. Notice its height is a code. Its height is the same code that I used for the progress too, if I'm not mistaken. No, I didn't. No, it's not the same code because it's not a percentage of 100. Now we want to find the percentage, so GV correct, how much data have we used, divided by what's our limit. So we're finding a decimal, which is going to be a percentage of our background height. All right. So that one is a little bit different than the progress code, but we're still achieving the same thing because as you can see, these are the same height. What else? What else? Paint inside of here. I think that's the exact same paint code that I have in progress because it's just either changing it from red to green depending on what our global variable when high. You know, if you want to be at 0.50, that's 50%. So if you want to pass your 50% mark and see red, so be it. More than likely, you want to set that a little bit higher. What else do I have to show you in there? Okay, how do I have these things positioned? This one you do have to be careful with how you have the entire group positioned. So the entire group that I call bar, I have it positioned in the bottom left. As you can see here, it is in the bottom left. It's only in the middle because of my animation. And then when you also position this bar, the actual green bar that you see here, make sure you have it positioned at the bottom of that overlap group. So that way it's going to start at the bottom of this bar. Now, if you've watched my videos on, I think, battery, progress, and did I do one more? I had a whole bunch of crazy stuff going on in that where I could flip this thing over and then the green would come down this way. All that stuff is tied into this, to be quite honest with you. Go back and look at, I think it's a video I did on battery progress. What else did I do something on? Maybe Wi-Fi progress. I can't remember now because it's been so long. But nonetheless, we don't have to have it growing from the bottom. But if you're watching this, you're probably pretty used to KLWP, and hopefully you have seen that video and you maybe do remember what I'm talking about. And yeah, so that's it. That's how you make the bar. Now, what's all this other stuff up here? This is where the actual teaching comes into play. So if all you want to do is figure out how to make it, I'm done with that. I don't want to adjust that. I'm going to make this style a little bit thinner. All right, all this other stuff that we see here. Let me copy this screen over, make it a little bit bigger. And we're done. Well, actually, I still want to see my global variables as well. And I'm going to clean up, do a little bit of organizing here. This program really does act slow here when I record videos, so you're going to have to bear with me. I just need to make the screen a little bit smaller. All right, that should, is it going to be good? Nope, not yet. All right, I hope you can read this and see everything else that's going on. Watching HD, right? So here we go. What does all this stuff mean? Well, first of all, I guess it's worth talking about this. Today is April the 8th, and I've just typed in some numbers. This is March 28th, March 29th, March 30th, 31st, April 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th. As you can see down here, we have a 0 on March 9th because it's not, or excuse me, on April 9th. These are March, these are April. I have a 0 down here because it's not April 8th yet. The way I have this coded is I have it returned to give me the data that I use each day. So I use 0 on the 28th, 0 on the 29th, 0 megabytes. And the reason why, I don't know if I mentioned this in this video. Maybe I did. I've recorded it once and I messed up, so I had to re-record it, or part of it. But here, I had to reset my phone. I had to factory data reset it. I think my son got a hold of it, did some things. He's 16 months old. He loves electronic devices, but I just learned a lesson. I'm not, maybe I am putting the blame on him. Maybe he didn't, but he does play around with it every once in a while, and the phone just did not cooperate with me. It was like restarting out of nowhere, so I reset everything, and I just did it recently. So I have no data from 28th and the 29th of March. However, I do have some from the 30th and 31st. Notice we got the same numbers over here, except these numbers are rounded and they are returning megabytes. This is actually megabytes too, but the way I have it coded, this is coded to not return the word or the letters MB, whereas this one is like an automatic deal. But notice these numbers match up. Well, what's the point? What am I trying to show you here? I'm trying to show you, though, that these are actually pulling, these are, get out of the way. These are actually how much data I used on the 31st. Oh, come on. This is how much data I used on the 31st, April 1st, April 2nd, April 3rd. And let's go in and look at some codes. So if I go to, I think it's that one. Yep. Okay, that right there is just the days. And here's the first, okay, the yellow. Here's what's going on here. Notice the codes. Whenever you code this traffic stats, and heck, it's worth me showing you the test. That's why I created it. If I come on down here to where I have test. All right, here's how it breaks down. If I delete this, it should, okay, where is it at? There we go. All right, traffic stats type. The type is going to be either mobile traffic or Wi-Fi traffic, or you can do both. If you read this description here, we have like TRX is total bytes downloaded. That'll be mobile and Wi-Fi. TTX is uploaded. That will be for mobile and Wi-Fi. TT is total uploaded and downloaded. Well, the same thing applies to just mobile, except we're going to do a mobile MRX, MTX, or MT. I want to do MT because MT will do all of my mobile traffic uploaded and downloaded, whereas this one here will do just like mobile downloaded. This will do just mobile uploaded, but this is mobile uploaded and downloaded. Same thing for Wi-Fi, so I'm interested in mobile. A is automatic. That's what makes that MB show there. But actually what I want to do is I want to use megabytes. That way my number is always going to be the same. For example, if I put in bytes for B, look how big that number is. If I do automatic, that can change. It can go from bytes to megabytes to kilobyte, or bytes to kilobytes to megabytes. I always want it to be megabytes. All right, that's why I set my limit earlier to 5,000. 5,000 megabytes is 5 gigs. So I have it coded correctly by using an M here. This will be the start, this will be the end. Now there's multiple ways to code this. R1D, R1D is basically, I want to look, if I want to rewind one day, go back one day, that will be April the 7th. All right, when do I want it to end? Well, I got it also ending on R1D. So that's going to start on April the 7th, end on April the 7th. Look at my number here. That's pretty much what I see right there. That's how much data I used on April the 7th. Now, if I were to change this code to R0D, it's going to start one day ago, and it's going to go up to today. R0D is like today, because we're not going back, we're not rewinding any days. Well, how do I get 63.172? Well, I guarantee if you add those two numbers together, I'm just going to do some decimal approximations. I'm adding this 29.3 roughly, plus the 33.9. And we are somewhere in the neighborhood of 63.2, 63.2. So that's how this works, start and end. Well, how do you get it to show, do you have to add up all these days? No. Watch what we can do here. If I go back and do R1D with no end, you may say, well, that's the same number. Because what it's doing is it's starting from 1 day ago and it's adding up all of my mobile traffic from 1 day ago up to right now. Well, if I were to go in here and do like 2 days ago, let's rewind 2 days. So today's April 8th, I go back to the 7th and the 6th. If we check this real quick, so 16.2, notice I'm going back to 2 days to April the 6th. 16.2 plus 29.3 plus 33.9. 79.4, 79.4-ish. I hope that makes sense. So that's how I have some of these codes going on. However, there are other ways to get the same exact thing. This is a full-fledged, not full-fledged lesson, but a pretty good lesson in mobile traffic and getting the codes to work the way you want them to work. So if I go back up here into this section here, let me show you the different ways I have it coded to pretty much get the same answer, with the exception of that guy right there. All right, where is it at? Boom. Let's go to the yellow and let's see how I have this coded. All right, so I've talked about mobile traffic, megabytes. Now, 1DR4D. This 1D here means the first day of the month, but I want to rewind 4 days. The first day of the month will be April 4th. If we rewind 4 days from that, we go back 1, 2, 3, 4 to March 28th. Well, that is returning a 0. Let's look at this one right here, this third line of my code, 1, 2, 3. I want to go from the first day of the month, and I want to rewind 2 days. And I want it to start there, and I want it to end there. This right here is a way to get how much traffic you use in a particular day. I just mentioned that a moment ago. If you start and end on the same thing, it's going to give you the traffic you used just during that one day. So this is saying first day of the month, rewind 2 days from that. First day of the month, rewind 2 days. Notice it says 11.80, and that's exactly what I see here on this third line of my code. Let's go to this one down here. This just means the third day of the month. So mobile traffic, third day of the month to the third day of the month. Well, that's going to be April 3rd, so 57.13973. I can't see that one. Which one can I see? 120. Okay, look at this one right here. This is the 1, 2, 3, 4, fifth line of my code. On April 1st, the first day of the month to the first day of the month, starting and ending. That's going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So that one right there, 122.955. Yep, that's the first day of the month. That's one way you can get it to code. Let me show you another way to get it to code. Let's go over to the blue. Some of these are more beneficial than others depending on what you're trying to accomplish, and that's why I'm showing you all these different ways. All right. This is the rewinding days. All of these are rewinding, but notice I'm still getting the same numbers. So, what does rewind do versus like first day of the month, second day of the month? Well, if I were to come back and look at this code tomorrow, these things would not be lined up anymore, because what it's doing right now is it's taking and it's rewinding 11 days. Well, today is April the 8th. So if I rewind 11 days from April the 8th, I go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. That is March 28th. But tomorrow, that is not 11 days, is not going to be the 28th. It's going to be the 29th, because we're progressing forward a day to April the 9th, if that was tomorrow. So this will change. If I come back and look at this tomorrow, this will not be the same as this one right here, because this was coded based on first day of the month, second day of the month, third day of the month, and that don't change. You know, April 1st is April 1st. So 1D, 1D is April 1st to April 1st, whereas if we rewind days, how do we get to April 1st up here? Well, it's April 8th. If we rewind 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, rewind 7 days, that's the code for that right there. I bet that's the fifth line of my code. Let's double check. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Rewind 7 days. That's the fifth line of my code. Notice it matches that. Now you may say, oh, I see the megabytes. Well, look how I have this one coded. I have an A for automatic. But if I were to put an M right here, watch this. Well, of course, you're not going to see it over here on this screen. But if I put an M right there, oh, you can see it right there. So it is changing that 11.80 megabytes to 182.87. Now, it shouldn't say megabytes right there. I don't think. Huh. Just learned something new. Oh, no, okay, hold it. It's not 182.87. It's the other one, 122.9553. That's the one I changed. What am I talking about? Yeah, R7. That's the one I changed right there, the 5th line in my code. Let me double check that, make sure I didn't munk that up. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5th line, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, so that's the one it changed. Notice when I put that M there, it doesn't list the megabyte, as I mentioned a few minutes ago. So that's another way to get our codes. This right here will change though, because when you rewinding 4 days from today, 1, 2, 3, 4 is going to be there, but rewinding 4 days from tomorrow, which will be the 9th, it will be 1, 2, 3, 4. So I hope you do understand how rewinding days will change versus using 1D, 2D, 3D, 4D, where that represents the first day of the month, the second day of the month, the third day of the month, the fourth day of the month, and so forth. And then we have this third one over here, which is the green column. I had this, just part of it coded differently. And this is where I ran into a little error. 28th day of the month, and the way I understand this is the 28th day of the month, but I want to go back 1 month ago. So I'm thinking, okay, 28th day of the month from 1 month ago would be March 28th. Since it's currently April, I want to go back 1 month to March 28th. And I thought that's the way it worked because I'm still getting the same numbers. For example, if I come down here to the 30th, I'm on my green code now, by the way. This is the 30th. Well, notice it's 30th. This one here is returning 11.80. Here's where the error is coming in. Notice I'm getting a 0 here, and I'm not getting this 182.87 blah, blah, blah. The only thing I can make, I'm just making an assumption right now, or I might not understand the code fully, is that the 31st day of the month from 1 month ago, or from the month prior to April, which will be March, I'm guessing, now March did have 31 days, but I'm guessing it will not return this to what I want it because maybe April doesn't have 31 days, and maybe there's a little conflict there in that code or something going on in the background of KLWP. If you have a solution to that, hit me up, but I couldn't get that to work. And I'm assuming it's because April doesn't have 31 days. Or heck, maybe 31 don't work, period. I don't know. But I ain't worried about it because I ain't got to use it. And hopefully you won't have to use it either because your billing cycle probably does not end on the 31st. After all, not every month has 31 days in it, right? But everything else I left the same. Rewind 7 days. I just wanted to show you that. That's how you can go back a month. You can rewind 2 months if you want, or 3 months, and talk about whatever day of the month you want. However, I wonder if you're in February and you want to go back to a day in January, I wonder if you could use, day 30, day 31, or day 29. And, because February only have 28 days. Let's talk about leap year, so funky stuff. Nonetheless, we will use kind of part of this in our code, in our little formula down here. So that's an explanation of all that. Now let's look at this stuff here. Now this right here is what we got to think about. So I'm done with the test. I'm done with that junk. Let's see here. Where do I want to go next? How do I get it to work, so to speak? How do I get this bar to work? After that thorough lesson, maybe we do have a little bit better understanding of what's going on. My cycle resets on the 17th. All right, so here's what I want you to do. I want you to think. Use your brain a little bit. And if my cycle resets on the 17th, am I approaching the end of my cycle, or have I just started a new cycle? Think about that. Well, today is April the 8th. So I'm approaching the end of my cycle because I got the 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th, 13th, 14th, 15th, 16th until I get to this day. So basically, I'm using this right here. If it is about to end. And the code that I'm using there is I'm using before, because I'm just before my cycle ends. And basically what this is doing is it's taking that 17 from right there, and it's saying the 17th day of the month from 1 month ago. So it's referring back to all my data back from March 17th. Does that make sense? 17th day of the month from 1 month ago. Now you might say, well, you don't even have any data from back then. But watch this. If you go through here and add up all these numbers, even if I did have some data back here, or if I did have data back from March 17th, it's going to add up all of my data from March 17th, or March 17th is pretty much what that means. But when it hits and it resets, that's where I had this other piece kicking in. Now, right now, this does not apply to me whatsoever because my cycle is about to end. I hope that makes sense. If we go in here and add up all these numbers, I guarantee you we get somewhere around 811. I'm going to grab a calculator real quick, make sure I ain't tripping. 11.8, 182.9. I'm just adding down here. That's pretty much 123. And then we have 278.2. It's going to be off a little bit because I'm rounding them. 57.1. 23.3. 55.4, this is taking forever. I'm just keep on going. 16.2, 29.3, and 33.9. I probably typed in something wrong. I'm seeing 811.1 on my calculator. Boom. See what I'm saying? Now, let me mess around with this and show you how this changes. So, I'm approaching the end of my cycle. Let me come over here to my globals in KLWP and let me change my start to, let's change it to something where my cycle has just begun, or if it recently restarted. So watch what's going to happen now. Let's say today's April 8th. Let's go back to, let's suppose our cycle started on the 5th of the month. Let me save this, go back to my home screen, and let's copy this new screen over. Notice the numbers changed. I know this is going to be a little slow. It's not too bad. Maybe the computer caught up. Yeah, it is a little glitchy, but hopefully you can still see this okay. All right, so I'm just moving it over the old one because now watch what happened. Well, for one thing, I don't know if you noticed from the last picture, but this thing dropped tremendously. Because what it's doing now, today is April the 8th, still the same date, but I set my cycle to reset on the 5th. So what has really happened here? Did it recently restart, or is my cycle about to end? My cycle just recently restarted because it resets on the 5th, so it's only been the 6th, the 7th, and the 8th up until this day. So now the correct code is this one. Maybe you notice how it says correct. And a while ago, it was actually this one that corresponded to that. So that's the way, those codes I gave you earlier, that's what's going back and forth between these. And it does address the fact where you got to be careful because you can't just, well, I don't want to get into that yet until I show you the code. But let's see, how in the heck are we getting 134.765, blah, blah, blah. Well, if my cycle resets on the 5th, if we add everything from the 5th up to right now, I'm just going to do whole numbers. I'm tired of rounding to the nearest 10th. 55, 16, 29, and 34. If I add those up, I get somewhere in the neighborhood of 134. If you add these up, you get that. Okay? And recall, a while ago, this was the one that worked because my cycle was about to end. But since my cycle recently restarted, now this is the one that I want. And this one does not apply. And this will change based on the correct code. Now, what code is this? What code is this before I jump into correct? This is the after code. This is the after code. This is what's happening given that I just recently restarted. Basically what it's doing there is it's just taking that code right there. And if you understand that, that's just 17D. Or in this case, what did I change it to? I changed it to a 5. So this is a 5D. Remember how I changed it just a moment ago? 5D. What does 5D mean? It's going to add up all of my data from the 5th day up to today because my cycle reset or restarted. Now, all that stuff is going to work based on this GV correct. And I'm going to try to explain it to you. Some of this stuff's just funky to explain. I mean, my brain works weird, but here we go. Correct. So notice I am using let me see. Okay. I want to round first of all. Notice the 134.76 blah, blah, blah is pretty much 135. That's what we see right there. All right, so I want to round. We talked about that in some videos. If the current day of the month, which is April 8th, if that's greater than GV start. So if the current day of the month is greater than GV start, or right now, remember I changed my GV start is no longer 17, my GV start is 5. Let me erase some of this stuff in here. So GV start's no longer 17, I have it 5. As you can see down there, I have that changing on my wallpaper. So is the current day of the month greater than GV start? Well, the current day of the month is, I can't write on this, the current day of the month is 8. That is bigger than 5. Well, therefore, it's going to return this code here. Traffic stats, mobile traffic, megabytes, GV after. Remember, I told you a moment ago, it's going to do this code given we have recently restarted. Well, what if it's not? What if the current day of the month is not greater than this guy? For example, when I had the 17, that's where it's going to do that GV before code inside of my traffic stats code. So it's going to do it from the month prior on that date. This right here does April 5th. This right here does March 5th. 5D means the 5th day of the current month. 5D R1M is going to be the 5th day of the month before it. And the reason why I had to code it like this is because when it becomes May the 1st, and suppose my GV is still 5. So suppose it is May 1st. I know it's not, but if DFD would become a 1, May 1st DFD would be 1. Is 1 bigger than 5? GV start. Is that bigger than 5? No. So it's going to return before. And before is still going to pull from the month before because my cycle hasn't reset yet. The only time this thing is going to reset and do an after is when the current day of the month is bigger than this variable. Otherwise, it's going to pull the data from the month prior up until that point. But when it hits this point, when the cycle changes, it's going to swap up on us and it's going to start recording after that date. I hope that makes sense. Probably got kind of carried away. I know this has been a long video, but like I said, I covered the part of just how to do it at first. This is an explanation of, why it works the way it does work. Yeah, there you have it. And so a thorough explanation on how to create a status or a progress bar of your data usage. Again, I like the global variables where you can adjust your limits. Just one more comment to add here. I very rarely exceed my 5 gigabytes. And like I said, I got 10 gigs. My wife and I were mostly on Wi-Fi, but I know a lot of you who are on the road a lot or who don't use Wi-Fi a lot. I mean, obviously you are going to use a lot of your data. So maybe you do want to tweak this, maybe do a greater than or equal to or something like that to accommodate the fact that maybe somewhere in there, if you don't do it versus if you are doing it, you may be getting an extra day's worth of data being recorded on the graph before it resets or whatever. But that's just a little minor thing. For me, I'm not too upset if it records an extra day's worth of data because more than likely I'm not going to go over it anyway. But I just wanted to point that out to you. How correct is this stuff anyway? I'm not 100% sure. I mean, I do monitor this compared to what my actual data on my phone reads, and it's pretty accurate. It just depends on what Verizon or US Cellular or whatever cell phone company you have, however they're recording your data. It may be a little bit different. I don't know. I'm sure there's a disclaimer somewhere on your contract or your bill every month that talks about that. But I wanted to point that out to you folks, and yeah, that's it for this video. Hope it helped.